Hey guys, this is Mark Allen for BH Spring Solutions, and today is July 4th, 2018, and today is also BHSpringSolutions.com birthday. BHSpringSolutions.com was opened 3 years ago on this date in 2015, and today we are going to do an endurance test with the Tisas Regent BR9 high power, and we've got as our victim, as our demonstration pistol, the stainless model, and I'm going to be reviewing with you real quickly the configuration that we're going to be using for our testing today. First of all, we'll start with the frame. We've got the frame stripped down with the exception of the trigger subassembly, and what we have done here is we have taken out the original Tisas trigger, and the reason that we did this is because in our pre-test testing, and we've now shot 800 plus rounds through this Tisas pistol, and about a week ago, 4 or 5 days ago, I took about 6 layers of skin, which is healing up now, off of my finger. And what did it was the sharp edges on the edge of the trigger of the Tisas trigger, and these edges are quite sharp. They're not very refined. And that's just what it did in less than 400 rounds of firing. So we have replaced out the original trigger with a cylinder and slide wide combat trigger, and this has much more of a curvature to it, and it's going to be less prone to open back up that place on my trigger finger. Now we want to talk a little bit about the trigger subassembly area of the Tisas pistol. We have found a dimensional difference that is different than on the FN Brownings or any of the other clones that we've seen. And what I'm talking about here, and see if we can show it in the video, this recess area, this is where the trigger and the trigger return spring, which is here, it contacts right in here. And this well, if you will, is deeper than on an FN Browning pistol or any of the clones that we have examined. And what it necessitated Tisas to do is it necessitated them to redesign their trigger return spring in order to make the trigger work. And what they redesigned, as you can see, is the front portion. This is a BH Spring Solutions trigger return spring, a 3-coil variety. We make 3-coil and 2-coil, and this is the 3-coil variety. This is also a 3-coil, comparable diameter of spring wire that's in the Tisas pistol originally, but you can see the difference in the hook that we call it on the front of the trigger return spring. Without that redesign, their cut of that well area causes a normal 3-coil trigger return spring, either from BH Spring Solutions or from Browning. It causes that spring to not work. It is not compatible. However, we have found that BH Spring Solutions 2-coil trigger return spring, which is a larger diameter spring wire, provides you better reset. It does function, and actually functions beautifully in the Tisas pistol because of that deeper well. With the heavier gauge spring wire, the 2-coil tactical trigger return spring, we call it, from BH Spring Solutions, really is a fantastic application, actually. So we won't be using the Tisas traditional trigger because I don't want to have to use gloves for shooting this shooting test, and I don't want to amputate my finger either. So we're going to be using the wide combat trigger. That's going to be more comfortable shooting. You can see down in there we do have the 2-coil trigger return spring. Maybe that will show up in the video. And actually, with that deeper well, we're getting a take-up feeling that is kind of between our the way our 3-coil and our 2-coil trigger return springs feel in any other high power. This one, our 2-coil trigger return spring in the Tisas with the wide combat trigger, this makes a nice balance. In fact, I mean, it is really just beautiful. The take-up is wonderful. The reset action of the spring is also very, very adequate, and we think we're going to really like that. We think we're really going to like that setup on the Tisas pistol. We're going to get a little bit of final cleaning here done. We've got the frame currently stripped bare. And the title of this test is, can the Tisas pistol be more than just a range gun? And you know, if you take a look at an original picture of the way this pistol was outfitted and when it was from the factory, it comes with a standard ring hammer. It comes with it is not SFS equipped, so in order to use it as a carry pistol and carry it in condition 1, you've got this protruding hammer cocked off the back of the pistol, and that really is not a comfortable carry profile because inside the waistband it tends to dig into the body, and then also the cocked hammer tends to grab clothing if you're trying to clear clothing if you're using it for concealed carry. So we're going to be putting the SFS system back into the pistol. So the original Tisas hammer strut, hammer assembly is going to be deleted from this test. We're going to be putting into the Tisas the SFS system here in a moment. The trigger subassembly area is already done. It's already back in place. Do want to make a quick note here for you though. This original Tisas trigger, this hole in the trigger is larger because the Tisas trigger pin is also larger, and you can see we have not put this pin back in the pistol. This is kind of problematic. We're finding a lot of pin issues in the Tisas pistol. You're going to see those here in a moment. But one of the things that you see is how this pin has started to spread. And this was just from normal in and out of the pistol, but this head end of it here has started to spread. This is the part that tightens into the frame area, but it originally was not spread like that. And now you can see the rim of the pin. That's just pin spread, if you will. So this is just really marginal kind of quality and materials that they've used for their pins. We have also replaced out the Sear pin. This is the Sear pin here. It has been replaced out with a FN Browning Sear pin, and I'm going to show you why. The reason for this one got us. Here's the FN Browning Sear pin. It's measuring 2.48 millimeters, and the Tisas Sear pin is measuring 2.53. And again, the FN Browning came in at, we're seeing it this time here at 2.45. And that difference means that you cannot put a FN Browning Sear and SFS Sear on this Tisas Sear pin. It's oversized. It does not go in and out freely. It has to be pounded into the frame. So we've replaced this out because that small amount of dimensional difference makes any high power Sear just, you can't put it onto the pin. It's too tight. This Sear pin was contributory to making about a 12.5 pound trigger pull out of the box on this particular Tisas pistol. Another pin that we've replaced with an FN pin as well. This is the original Sear lever pin. And what we're seeing here is this pin has just bulged on the one end and it's collapsed on the other end. It's oversized. And this was also creating a real problem with the Sear lever, and that again contributing to the Sear lever was up on this Sear lever pin, and we'll show you. Essentially what it was it was getting bound up with the bulged part, and you see when I get down here to this part, you can't even barely move that on that part of the Sear lever pin. So the part of the pin that was impacting the Sear lever, which has to move when you pull the trigger, was up here on this bulged out part of the pin. Again, that's just real marginal kind of stuff. It's an easy fix. It's not a very big problem to fix it. Here is an FN Sear lever pin. You see that pin has been in and out of this pistol now half a dozen times, and it is still uniform end to end. It has good clearance, so when it's installed, this is not going to be a problem or an interference with our Sear lever. That was another one we had to change. Another pin that we had to change, the Extractor pin, is here, and it is an interesting pin because we think of roll pins, and I'm going to try to show you a difference here. This roll pin is from FN Browning, and if you can see the edge of it here, it's a split straight down. Well, this is a sort of a roll pin from Tisas. This roll pin from Tisas is basically very, very thin sheet metal, it looks like, and then it's rolled. And in this pin here, it's got to be rolled 3 or 4 times around itself. And these pins are not lasting for us. A couple of in and outs of the pistol, and these are starting to spread and deform, and they're just not working out very well. The other interesting thing that we found, if we can show this, is the difference in, see how we're going to do this, the difference in the length of these two pins. The Tisas Extractor pin is shorter, and it doesn't need to be shorter. The FN Browning Extractor pin is a little bit longer, and for this application it's more appropriate, and it's just, again, a much better made pin. So that's about the Extractor pin. We're going to talk about Extractors just a moment. This is the Tisas original Extractor. We've got some pictures of this. This is an FN Browning Extractor. It's the silver finish model that FN put into a lot of their practical pistols and things back in the day. But I want to show you, if I can, there's a profile difference of this extractor claw. The Tisas extractor claw seems to come kind of straight out, and it has more metal and thinner metal. This extractor has been associated with breakage by numerous Tisas high power owners so far. They've purchased replacement extractors here from BH Spring Solutions, and we have the FN Browning extractors. If you can see the difference in the profile, this profile does not thin down the claw area too early, and we're thinking that this is the design flaw that's creating the breakage in the Tisas extractor. We are going to start today with the Tisas extractor in the pistol. If it runs for 6,000 rounds, beautiful, and we're hoping it does. If, however, it does not, we will be replacing it out with the FN extractor I just showed you. We've already tested that extractor fully. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to reassemble the slide components first and get those off of the table. We're going to be using the Tisas firing pin that came in the pistol. We're also going to be using the Tisas firing pin retaining plate. This is going to be a good test for both of these parts. The high powers firing pin does not have a history of breakage. So testing this firing pin for 6,000 rounds is going to be a good test for that. The Tisas firing pin retaining plate, this is another part that has been associated with breakage or pieces breaking off just occasionally. It's not a frequent thing, but we've seen it, especially in surplus pistols from Israel. So these are both original Tisas parts. This is the original Tisas firing pin spring. Now, understand the firing pin spring in the high power does not make the firing pin go into the primer of your bullet casing. This is what keeps the firing pin off of the primer of the bullet casing. It is your drop safety. There is no mechanical drop safety in this high power. All of the drop safety is in the firing pin spring. In other words, the firing pin spring, when the firing pin is installed like this, you can see how that spring is keeping the firing pin rearward. That is your protection in the event that the pistol is dropped. And if you think about it now, you've got this firing pin down in the pistol gets dropped, the pistol stops, but this firing pin could continue by just the energy. And what's keeping it from continuing and firing the weapon is this spring keeping the firing pin rearward. This is a light version of a firing pin spring in the high power. This is the BH Spring Solutions heavy firing pin spring, which we are going to be replacing in this Tisas and we'll be utilizing in our testing. It's a far safer design, and so that's the design that we're going to be going ahead and using. We're going to go ahead and put the firing pin retaining plate back in place. We're using today the BH Spring Solutions firing pin retaining plate installation and removal tool, and as we're going to see, it works really nicely on the Tisas and goes back together just that painlessly. And now we're going to go ahead and replace the rest of the slide parts. Okay, we're going to go ahead. This is a BH Spring Solutions high power extractor spring that we're going to be installing. This is all BH Spring Solutions springs that are going back into this Tisas pistol, by the way. And we're going to go ahead back with the original Tisas extractor today, and we're going to be giving that a try. Okay, when the extractor goes back in place, you set your extractor, and then you take a 1/16 pin punch and go ahead and hold the extractor in place. In this instance, we're going back in with a extractor pin from FN Browning, and just about home on this. One of the things you can help yourself with is if you take an oversized, like a 3/32 roll pin punch, and then until you're all the way in and ready for the final tap in of that pin, helps you keep from spreading pins. So we've got the extractor and extractor pin back in now. And we're going to go back with the Sear lever. And the Sear lever goes back in. We're going to do kind of the same thing as we did on the extractor. Go back this way. There's the FN Browning Sear lever pin. And by the way, these magnets that we're using, these are also available from BH Spring Solutions. They're a nice solution for a bench to free up your hands a little bit at times. Okay, and finally we are to the rest of our slide, and that means we need to get our barrel. Our barrel has started to show some indications of a little bit of scratches and things like that. So BH Spring Solutions also has a polishing kit. Comes with 5 different polishing compounds, 20 polishing bobs currently, and it's a complete deluxe polishing kit system. Comes with a cleanup polishing cloth as well. And we're not going to show all of the polishing that we're doing in the pistol and to the feed ramp. Typically we would use multiple different grades of polishing compounds when we do this. But to get started, we've taken a polishing bob, we've put a little bit of Gunzilla, you can use mineral oil, something like that as well, and we put it on the polishing bob, and now you can charge your polishing bobs just like I'm doing now, and that should just about do it. And it doesn't take very long. This is a easy to use system, and it's going to, in this case, it's going to clean up this this barrel very quickly, I think. thinking we've gotten a very nice result there. This barrel has only seen about 800 rounds of usage, but that's going to help us today. 6,000 rounds is a lot of ammunition, and that will help us keep that keep the barrel area good and clean. We are using Tisas's barrel, good-looking barrels. We're a little concerned because some of these barrels we've seen don't look like they got the hole in the end of the barrel just exactly perfectly centered, but that's a different story for a different day. So far we've had good performance out of the barrel, good performance as far as accuracy. We will be using Tisas's recoil spring assembly guide paired with a BH Spring Solutions optimized 17-pound recoil spring. Here's one of the reasons we're doing so. This is the original Tisas recoil spring, and you're going to see that the way they've terminated this recoil spring here is just by cutting the coil. It's not closed at both ends. The BH Spring Solutions springs are closed at both ends. In our testing so far, we've got excellent performance in the Tisas pistol out of the BH Spring Solutions spring. We're going to stay with that. So now our slide is fully assembled, and you've seen how this setup for this test has gone together. We're going to put just a drop of Gunzilla on each of the slide rails there, and we're now going to go ahead and set that aside. We're going to get back into the frame here in just a moment, but we have decided we are going to go ahead and put a Picatinny Rail on this Tisas pistol, and we're going to show you even the process for doing it. This is the Picatinny Rail from RDIH, and the significance of including this in the test is this is a kind of a high-tech injection molded Picatinny Rail. And we have been told that it is stable up to 248 degrees Fahrenheit. And the significance of it is this thing is just like feather light. And it's also just very rigid, very strong. It goes on to a high power, a 1911 or a Beretta 92. And it gives you an accessory rail capability in the form of a Picatinny Rail. That Picatinny Rail is going to be paired with RDIH's flashlight Picatinny Rail flashlight mount, and it's going to go together just like this. And that's going to give us one-hand operation with a light. And so part of this test is also a test of this Picatinny Rail, because it literally is so light it does not change the balance or the handling characteristics of the pistol at all. I mean, this thing is just like a feather. But it's going to be subjected to the same heat that the steel frame is going to be subjected to today, and we're going to put it through a test. We're going to see just how good of material is this. Will it withstand true battlefield conditions, and actually exceeding battlefield conditions. So we're going to be going ahead mounting that onto this Tisas pistol next. Third and fourth hole. It's always good. You want to check and make sure the frame is safely abutted up against the block. Retention spring is still in place, and we'll get our fourth hole drilled. Okay, from here, very short way home now, we're going to use our tapping tool to go ahead and tap these holes or thread them for our screws that will mount our and we've got hole number 1 tapped. Tap number 2. start it again if you want to. And you want to? Okay. And we're tapping holes number 3 and 4. Absolutely just love this frame drilling machine. It really makes a short job out of something that otherwise would be a very long job. This would be just a great device and a great tool for an armorer. And there's armorers who have really enjoyed them and used them to put Picatinny rails on high powers in 1911s, the Berettas. Works extremely good. You see, we can see the tapping tool and how that's working right up in the frame. And we're finished. We're going to take some compressed air, blow everything off, so we've got a clean frame free of our metal shavings, and we're going to be ready to mount a Picatinny rail, put this frame back together, and we're going to be testing. Okay, and our Picatinny rail has been installed and looks great. So that is going to accommodate for part of our shooting a flashlight in a mount just like that. These are the flashlight support for Picatinny rail from RDIH, also the Picatinny rail for a pistol frame. This is for high powers, 1911s and Beretta 92s. And we're going to be using the VH Spring Solutions tactical flashlight in one of the flashlight mounts, and we're going to be using the RDIH flashlights in the other. And currently the RDIH flashlights are not available. They may come available again on our website in the future, but they're currently not available from anywhere. But we want to test both of those setups, compare them, see how each of them does, especially mounted to a firearm, and the entire flashlight taking the punishment of recoil and this entire test. So we're just going to see how those flashlights work out. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get the frame portion of the high power here back together, and we're going to show the process. We do have the FN Sear pin. We are installing the Fast Safety, or SFS, from RDIH and BH Spring Solutions. This is available on the BH Spring Solutions website, currently under a tab called High Power SFS. And you're going to notice first the SFS Sear is smaller than the original Sear in the traditional operating system of any high power. And the way that this goes back together, we're going to take the Sear with the Sear pin here through the hole. We just go ahead and hang the Sear on the Sear pin just like this. The return lever is a part that looks like this. It has a little hook on the end of it. When it's installed, it's going to hang like this. We're going to start with it up in this position, and then we're going to go ahead and slide the Sear pin a little bit further and pick up the return lever. Then you just let the return lever just fall down like that. And now we have two parts on our Sear pin, and we have one more to go. We're putting the original ejector, this is a Tisas part, we're going to go ahead and put it back into the Tisas on the Sear pin as well. And the way you install it is just hold it like so, and then come back with your Sear pin, find the hole in the ejector like that. And that pin will need to be centered, and we have everything now hung on the Sear pin. Next step is to grab our SFS hammer assembly. We went ahead, took all of this out after about 800 rounds, and cleaned everything meticulously before we start this test. The way the hammer goes back up in there, you want to turn your ejector up as you see it, and the hammer is going to slide right up into place. Okay, continuing in, we've gotten our hammer assembly up into position. We put our extractor now into position, We have our Sear and our return lever. If you can see that down in right here, our return lever, the hook, the Sear, the ejector, the hammer. Everything is now in place. We grab our left side safety lever, and what we're going to do is we're going to feed that safety lever all the way through, making sure that the second post on this safety lever is inside the hook and behind the Sear, just like it is right now. And then, in order to go ahead and install our cocking lever spring, in order to do that, you orient the pigtail on the one end on top, or in other words, now that I'm holding it like this, it is on top. That needs to stay on top. And as we go ahead and insert it in that opening right there, and there's the opening. I'm pushing upward just a little bit from the underside. I'm pushing upward just a little bit from the underside on the safety lever, and at the same time I'm moving the cocking lever spring up into its position we need it to be in, and again we're keeping that pigtail there on top. Now we're just going to give our cocking lever spring an insertion, press down and pull the Sear spring out, and we're in position. I can look here, see the little tip of the spring, the pigtail of the cocking lever spring. It is oriented up or away from the frame. We should be in good shape. Now we'll go ahead and we'll install the Sear spring. So we're bringing the Sear spring right down into the frame right behind the Sear. So if that does pick up on the camera at all, we're going right behind the Sear. Now we're going to press flush to the frame here. We'll go right to through the hole with the tail of the spring. We pressed this way and you heard it snap and click into place. A good test at this point is magazines move in and out freely. That tells me that the Sear spring is not protruding, that it is in good position. The last thing we have to do is attach our ambi-side safety lever, and we've got our last pin to install, and we'll go ahead and use a little oversized punch on that. And we'll finish it with the 1/16. Okay. We're going to finish this off with the original Tisas grips, and you're going to see here the SFS function. That really is sounding excellent. And we've lubricated all of the critical points at this stage. We'll put a couple drops in this area. Also on our trigger lever, we'll put a drop there. We've already oiled very lightly the trigger sub-assembly, and our slide is already completely put together. And we'll go ahead and put our extended slide stop. So the slide stop is not the original equipment. The things that you saw just go into the frame area. The original part there is the ejector, and everything else has actually been replaced in favor of the SFS system. The primary function of the SFS system is the pistol can now be carried in the hammer forward carry position. When we pull the safety off, it cocks the hammer, and again we're put back on safe when the hammer is pushed forward manually. By the way, in terms of tactical safety and safe carry conditions, the SFS system, I want you to watch what happens here. When this hammer is pushed forward, it is engaging, in essence, at least 3 safeties, and I want to show them to you. This is a drop safety. This part cams down out of the way of the hammer meeting the firing pin when the trigger is fully pulled rearward. Until that time, this is an additional drop safety that's been added to the Tisas. This protects you in the event of a hammer drop. In other words, a drop on the hammer. So we have a heavier firing pin spring in the slide to protect us from a muzzle drop. This is a mechanical drop safety that protects from a hammer drop. When this hammer is pushed forward, that drop safety I just showed you here on the other side of the hammer, it stays in place. It is engaged. The manual safety is upward. Our slide is locked. Our trigger is disabled at this point. So there's 1, 2, locking the slide. The hammer is locked. That is a safety. The drop safety is in place. When the safety is pulled off, you have disengaged the trigger lockout. You have disengaged the locked hammer. You have released or disengaged the locking mechanism of the safety on the slide, and when the trigger is pulled, the drop safety will cam down out of the way and enable the weapon at that point to be fired. The original grips that came with this pistol from Tisas are not compatible with an ambi safety. You'll notice we've taken away the Tisas little nub of a one-sided safety, and we've replaced it with the ambi safety of the SFS system. The grips that come with the Tisas are not compatible. Those grips create a feeling of a rectangular block in your hand. At any rate, you're going to notice these are RDIH tactical and ergonomic shooting grips, and those are just a beautiful fit on the Tisas pistol, and we will be conducting this entire test with the RDIH grips. A little bit about this test. This test is going to follow the protocol that was used by the United States military when the 1911 pistol was tested in 1911. That is a 6,000 round test, shot 100 shots at a time, and then the pistol will be allowed to rest or open air cool for only 5 minutes, and that's going to give us time to reload magazines, and then we'll shoot another 100 rounds. We expect the pistol to get too hot to either hold or fire at some point. That probably will come around 400 to 500 rounds. When it does, the pistol will be dropped into a bucket of water, allowed to cool, and then we'll dump the water out of it, and we're going to continue shooting. At this point, we are fully back together. Everything feels just excellent. Everything has been well cleaned. The feed ramp on the barrel has been polished. Everything has been lubricated at this point, and we are at this point. You have seen the setup of the Tisas pistol for the BH Spring Solutions 6,000 round proving test and endurance test. We're going to be particularly interested about the performance of this extractor because it's had a reputation of breaking. We have an FN extractor that kind of does look cool with the stainless steel finish of the Tisas, so we've selected it, already tested it, and we'll be using it should we have breakage of the Tisas extractor at any point during our test. So we are, one other quick thing, all of the magazines being used for our testing today, we're using the 2 Metgar magazines that came with the pistol, a 15 round and a 13 round Metgar magazine. If you ever wondered what the difference in these magazines are, the 13 round magazines have a larger and more stable follower. The 15 round magazines have a smaller follower and it is less stable. The way you can test that is take an empty magazine and take a pin punch tool or a ballpoint pen or whatever with no ammunition in the pistol, push down the back, push down the front of the follower of different high power magazines, and you'll notice what we call a stability difference. The 13 rounders tend to, when you push down on the rear of the follower tends to just go straight down. On the 15 rounders, if you do that, you'll notice the follower kind of wants to buck, and the front will rise and the back part will want to cave, and it will want to jam itself basically in the magazine. Don't have any real function or reliability issues too much with the 15 rounders. So we will be using today all Metgar magazines in 15 round, 13 round, and we have one 10 rounder in the mix. And so those are going to be the magazines exclusively that we'll be using for the 6,000 round test today. And I think that's about it. It's time to go shooting.